Let's define a few terms.
Yeah, so let's define terms first.
Sure. So realism...
What does terms mean?
Okay, that's a bit tricky.
That's a genius.
Assalamu alaikum guys, and welcome to another episode of Smile to Jannah, where today I'm joined with my main man Subur, and we're going to be reviewing a discussion Mohammed Hijab had finally with Jordan Peterson. Isn't it, Subur? Yeah. Alright bro, take the lead, because we were watching it together.
Yeah.
And I think the people in the dawah scene like yourself probably benefited more from it than the layman like me. There's certain kind of big moments that I was like, yo, this
You're not
is...
a layman. Richard Dawkins, they were talking...
Did you call me Hazrat?
No, I didn't call you Hazrat.
Oh, maybe you should.
Right in the beginning, they were talking about, whether they actually need an argument for God's existence, whether God is basically a proposition.
Why bother with the propositional arguments?
And if you remember,
what does that mean, God being a proposition? I thought he was just talking about the contingency argument.
Yeah, exactly. So what basically happened is Hijab was speaking about the contingency argument.
Yeah.
And what happened is that Dr. Peterson basically was trying to say, well, do we even need one? Don't make essentially God a proposition. And he said one of the problems with Richard Dawkins is, he wants you to accept that idea that, it's all propositional.
Well,
and
you said that a couple of times. What's propositional?
As in, the point he's trying to get to is you don't need to make God into something you need to prove. You need to rationally provide evidence for necessarily. And that's why he spoke about the supposed divine spark, as in you can have a belief without actually having to put forward a rational argument for it necessarily. Yeah. So, when we were talking about this earlier before we started recording, the world, is it real?
This isn't real.
What is real? How do you define real?
Yes, it's real.
Do we necessarily need to prove it's real rationally?
To some people.
But can we do that? Can we actually prove the world is real?
I would say so, wouldn't you?
Well, it seems like we can prove everything
like
rationally.
Descartes, you go,
yeah.
I think, therefore I am.
I mean, that's a related point, but you don't always have to prove every single thing. And you can't prove the world is real, because you have to presuppose the world is real in order to make an argument in the first place. Yeah. So basically, long story short, you don't have to, like human beings, we believe in right and wrong. We believe truth is valuable. We believe the world is real. We believe human beings have other minds. These things don't need to be proven. They're like...
Wait, we believe human beings have other minds?
As in other human beings have minds.
Okay.
They're not just robots. Yeah. So, these things are what philosophers, and they spoke about this, self-evident truths.
Okay.
This is what was being referred to. And it was a really nice section. Do you remember when Hijab mentioned Justin Barrett?
Of an instinct in believing in God.
What's his last name?
Barrett.
How do you spell that?
Yes, that was a very good one. Yeah.
What did you think of that?
Well, that's one of the few points I actually understand. So,
I'm sure you understood more than this. More.
I mean, that's good. We use it in Speaker's Corner as well, isn't it?
Yeah, we do.
It's like, it's a very credible research that was done with 32,000 people to prove that, look, even young kids have a innate yearning to believe in a God. So
yeah.
And what I liked about it was even Jordan was like, oh, Barrett, how are you spelling that?
Maybe we should play that for them.
Yeah, no, they don't deserve it.
Okay. It was also very interesting about his style in regards to how he approached the discussion. So it wasn't like, my worldview against your worldview. I found his a way of approaching it very humbling. So it was kind of like, okay, I'm here to learn.
Are there other things that you think, places that I've misstepped in a serious manner that should be rectified as far as you're concerned?
Even the body language, it was very much like, okay, so what about this? What about this? What about this? He was pushing back at points. Hijab was pushing back at his points, but there was mutual respect. It wasn't just like, okay, I'm going to prove you wrong, you're going to prove me wrong, but there was a lot of, okay, what do you think about this, what do you think about that? And we're going to get into some of those things, but I think that type of attitude is quite respectable.
Yeah, you're 100% right. It wasn't antagonistic, and it wasn't, because we know he's trying to release his stuff in the Arabic language, so he does want to maintain his Muslim audience.
Yeah.
So we understand that element of things as well from a marketing side and from that element.
Which is good, which is actually very, very much the right thing to do. If you have good ideas, you want to share them with people, why neglect a huge part of the world, the Muslim world? In fact, I was very happy to see that on Twitter, he said his book has been translated into Uzbek, in Central Asia. Also, he has an Arabic channel. So this is also very good. And this was a great discussion because you had a traditionalist Muslim and you had Peterson, and they went head to head.
Who's the traditional Muslim? I thought Hijab was discussion with him.
So
who's this guy?
None of them were holding back with their views. Yeah. They saw where their views contradicted. They saw where their clashes were. They saw where their convergence were. And they tried to find commonalities where there was commonalities, and where there was misunderstandings, there was misunderstandings. But, that's what I really like. And there's something very interesting that Hijab mentioned about international relations and realism. I think we should maybe play that clip and then...
Nah, forget it.
Go ahead. Put him on!
One of the points that Hijab raised about the warlord comment.
What about this relativism that you're talking about?
The realism.
Yeah.
Okay, so firstly, let's define a few terms, because obviously these guys, they're both well educated. They both understand what they mean by these terms, and for someone that's not familiar, you have to sort of define things.
Yeah. So let's define terms first.
Sure. So realism.
What does terms mean?
Okay, that's a bit tricky. The easiest thing to do is to bypass what you said and to stick to this. Yeah. So he kept saying realism.
Yeah.
Realism means realism is a theory in international relations, in the field of international relations, in political science.
Okay.
And realism is essentially the idea that states care about their own security, their own self-interest. That's the goal.
Why didn't you just say that?
Well, because it's rather than saying it in the long-winded way, it's just easier to say realism. Okay. Now, there's an alternative idea, which is liberalism. Now, this isn't the liberalism that Mohammed Hijab had the debate with Dr. Lal Ghul, and he's speaking about having sex with a dog and stuff. That's not that type of liberalism.
It's not that type of video.
You're somebody that must be watching pornography. Hijab, please allow me, please. Yeah.
So we're not talking about liberalism as a ideology here. We're speaking about liberalism as a theory in international relations, which is that states are essentially there to have goals beyond their self-interest, to cooperate, to have interdependence, trade, globalization, all these types of things. So what the comment that was made by Peterson, which Hijab was raising, was that he called the Prophet ﷺ a warlord.
Yes.
I'm sure you have some thoughts on this, right?
Yeah, I mean, that was a thing that I think had the Muslims up in arms, to be honest. Like hearing...
Metaphorically.
Yeah, metaphorically, of course. But I think anyone who had that was furious.
Yeah.
Especially... somebody that you assume to be as balanced, as nuanced, and as logical as Jordan comes across, for him to make such a blasé statement like this was, I don't know, the Muslim community, I think felt hurt and disappointed, more so than anything else.
And I think if that comment came from someone else, so if it came from an Islamophobe, it came from a right winger, or someone that
works at KFC,
well, just some other, I think the comment would have been,
I think his name is Marv.
Yeah, like Marv. It would have been water over a duck's back. Yeah, but because a lot of Muslims follow his stuff, and they see some correspondence between Islam and a certain teaching of Islam and certain things that he's saying.
Are we still talking about Marv?
Yeah, so that's why I think they got offended, at that comment.
Yeah, so I mean, if you're working in KFC and your name's Marv, you
shouldn't talk about international relations and the state of anarchy.
Why don't you just serve the sachets of ketchup, not charge extra for them, because it's preposterous, to be honest.
Absolutely.
And that's wrong. But coming back to the warlord thing, because I think we shouldn't digress.
We shouldn't digress, indeed.
Shouldn't do that. Like,
indeed.
We should stick with the point.
Yes.
But that was hilarious, because when we were watching it, there's like 3 bits.
Are you going to put them in? You have to put them in.
Yeah, I'm going to have to look for them.
To get straight in my mind.
Yes.
Now.
Yes.
And so there's that conflict.
Yes. Yes.
I'm firmly aware of that.
And there's like a serious discussion, and then Peterson would say something like, isn't this the case, or something like this, and Hijab would be like, yes.
I mean, the fact that he came dressed in a circus tent was bad enough as it was.
We have to give respect where it's due, and he took the comment back. And he, realized that actually there was more to it, and Hijab explained in a beautiful way about the Medinan period, about essentially that there was a realist framework within which states were working in international relations back then. If you didn't conquer the Persians, they're going to conquer you. You didn't conquer the Romans, they're going to conquer you.
Yeah.
And the world was a messy place. So there's nothing exceptional or remarkable about Islam from the perspective of the way that it deals with states, because people have to do that. So him taking the comment back and realizing that it was injudicious was really humbling. Yes.
Yeah, 100%.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, you're right. The fact that he retracted it, and especially like he's got a big, far right following, Douglas Murray, Ayan Hirsi Ali, Sam Harris.
Which, by the way, is not representative of, he's brought on the guy from Guantanamo. He's brought on the woman that escaped from North Korea. Like,
okay.
we would not classify him absolutely as right wing. But, obviously people who see certain things that may fit with the nuclear family and conservative values, they go towards that.
Yeah. So he definitely attracts that
crowd.
That crowd. But you're right, it is good to make that distinction, and for him to kind of bring hijab on is commendable. And another point that I really liked was when the hijab brought up the point about a Muslim country that didn't have a strong economy or something along those lines.
Oh yeah, there's this little discussion about GDP, and then
Yes.
and then Hijab brought up the Ottoman Empire, and in the past, obviously,
Even Bahrain,
even
the modern day example.
I believe he said
Brunei,
he gave the example of Brunei, but also historically we can speak about the Abbasids, we can speak about the Umayyads. Muslims, when they had their their governance, they were the people who were far ahead than the rest of the world in terms of their political system, their economic system, their cultural system, the science that they actually taught, the development of philosophical ideas. All of these things were quite strong, including, of course, their gross domestic product. So we can't just take a snapshot of today's Muslim countries and say, these things. But again, he was very appreciative of knowing these things.
And for the Marvs that work at
The
KFC out there, I mean,
And their managers who go, yes.
nicely
slipped in there. Yeah.
Firstly, in this day and age where it's cool to be Islamophobic, seeing somebody of a high kind of profile as Jordan Peterson reaching out to the Muslim community and seeing and being received well by the Muslim community. I mean, if you look at the comments there and you look at the amount of Muslims that are appreciative, not that he's done Islam any favor, but just the fact that he has allowed a Muslim onto his platform, an Orthodox Muslim,
And he's willing to learn.
And
he's asking, he said this before the discussion, that I'm not going to have a debate. I want to learn something. And then he's asked, and he's listening with he's asking questions with the intention to learning, and you can see that, and it went both ways. And I think things like this are a good lesson for just how discussions and civil discussions and these things should actually take place.
100%. Was there anything else?
No.
It's not quite the same as
Yes, it's not. But you got to put that in there. Come on.
And also, I think just for the people that are watching, mashallah, definitely encourage your children. Don't just send your children to just learn generic subjects just so they can bring money home, but really getting them to learn Islamic knowledge from knowledgeable people, sending your kids to credible institutions so they can benefit, so they can defend Islam in a academic, articulate, erudite way, like it was done. Like this, I think, is a really good example, and I think we should make dua for the brother Mohammed, what's his name? Was it?
Yes, Mohammed Hadib.
What?
I think that bloke there, yeah. So, mashallah, I did see, the amount of books He went through them several times. Even when he was going through that thing when he had the allergic reaction that I'm not going to mention.
Oh yes, let's not mention that, please.
Let's not mention that. But he was still doing it, and I think that's why we were so hurt when it didn't happen. This is something you need to take forward. Take from this, grow from this. Look at some of the stuff that Hijab said and do your own research and, note it down, discuss it with other people and just learn it. Don't just watch this sort of stuff or going, yeah, that's it. Take that,
That's
Marv.
it. Take it, Marv.
All right. So, let's leave it there. Don't forget to subscribe to Sabur Ahmed, the main guy when it comes to evolution. MashaAllah, can I say you're doing your PhD? Or yeah. He's doing his PhD on
philosophy of biology, broad subject.
MashaAllah, kya baat hai
Kya baat hai, yaar.
mashallah.
Kya baat hai.
And until next time,
Assalamu alaikum.
wa alaikum assalam.